welcome to this week's episode of Not DnD, brought to you by EN World Live. We are in October. It's kind of spooky season, and you might be looking for some new games to try. We have plenty here for you. And this week we have our guest, Robby Howell, here to tell us about their game, Enclave. Thanks so much for coming on.
Great to see you, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. It is a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to dive into your game, Enclave, because you've got a Kickstarter campaign launching literally tomorrow. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us, because I know the build-up to a campaign is a time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we'll be talking about crowdfunding and your experience with that a little bit later on as well. But before we start, I'd love to talk about your background and history of games, and you kind of just as a gamer in the hobby space, because a lot of people enjoy playing games, but not everyone goes on to publish. So I'd love to hear about kind of your journey into that. So let's start from the very beginning. What was the first tabletop role-playing game you remember playing?
That's the funny thing about it, right? So I have a very kind of unconventional background in the tabletop space.
Okay.
I only learned what a tabletop role-playing game was. And in fact, I only learned what the term D&D meant when I was about 18 or 19 years old.
Okay.
I had been designing diceless tabletop role-playing games for almost a decade before then. And I'd been actually working as a paid professional game host for about 3 years before I even learned what the term meant. The reason this happened is growing up, I, like many others, had screen time restrictions. And so my friends and I would try to act out video games to get around screen time. And that evolved naturally into us making our own and then realizing we could go pretty deep with them. And so suddenly I'd been making games for my whole life and even making some money doing it. And then I learned about this D&D thing, and I learned about this whole industry. And I was like, first of all, those jerks stole my idea. But second of all, I've been trying to fit myself into the industry ever since, coming as kind of a perennial outsider who, in some ways, this has been a great boon because it means I haven't kind of succumbed to many of the conventions and pitfalls that many other games may fall for.
Wow, that must be so exciting. They're realizing this thing that you've been doing for so long, there's a whole world that exists around that. Exactly. It must have been like crazy. A kid in a candy store. You're like, wow, that's a great idea. Well, that must have been really fun exploring that. So that's so interesting that you started in that way. So I'm guessing you're into digital games and board games and things like that as well. So lots of things in the general gaming space.
Oh yeah, like as a kind of weird fun fact about me, though at this point I've now read and learned about dozens and dozens of different tabletop systems. I have only ever played a game besides my own once, and I have only ever not hosted a game once in my life.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I've been a perpetual host, and the one game I ever played was Pirate Borg.
Fair enough. As a player, amazing. So, do you think you prefer running games as opposed to playing games? Is that
vastly?
Yeah.
Vastly. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. I love it. And for Enclave alone, I've at this point hosted, I'd say comfortably over 2,000 sessions and probably hosted for maybe as many as like 4,000 people.
Wow. That's a lot of games being run. Well, let's segue into talking about Enclave, because it sounds like you've been making games for a very long time. You know, it realized there's this whole industry thing and then decided to put your game out there. What was that process like? Because a lot of people love running games and you know, hosting and making their own games, but not everyone decides to publish them and, you know, put it out there, you know, commercially. What made you want to do that?
Well, the funny thing is I really didn't. I was really nervous about the whole thing because I'd been working as a paid professional host, right? That in many ways it was more similar to tutoring than anything else. Like I'd work with families, I'd work with friends my age, I'd work with clubs and after school programs. And the idea of like putting my stuff out there, because I didn't have written rule sets for most of my work. It was entirely oral tradition. You teach it to people as they are playing. And so not only was it daunting to put all of that to paper, but when I first kind of toed into the TTRPG industry, it wasn't the warmest reception, to be honest. Like diceless gaming is a very weird thing. Even today, there's a lot of resistance to it. And I was laughed out of the room for like more than a couple like meetups and things like that.
Oh, wow, really?
And so it was definitely like an uphill battle. But I tend to be a bit of a defiant person. So that if anything, being not welcomed kind of made me want to do it more, I suppose.
Okay, great. Well, yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that was the case.
No,
I mean,
it's all right.
there's
It's
so many.
understandable. I'm
Yeah.
like coming in as a complete outsider being like, hey, did you know that you can do this completely differently than you ever have? I understand why there was resistance to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just allowed to be a little bitter about it, I think. Just a little.
Yeah, no, the indie gaming space, I think now is so much diversity and there's so many different things going on. I mean, I'm very lucky doing Not DnD. I get to speak to loads of different creators that have different ideas and stuff. So I think, and different people like different things. Like some people like their dice and want to do that, and that's fine. But I think there's space for everything, and there's enough people wanting to play games. But if somebody hasn't heard of Enclave, could you give us an intro into what the game is? It was originally crowdfunded back in 2023, so the game is out there and available.
Mm-hmm.
But your new Kickstarter coming up is a second print run and has expansion rules and things. But if people missed the first crowdfunder and aren't aware of it, how do you introduce the game to people?
Of course. So Enclave is a diceless TTRPG. I describe it as a diceless game with infinite depth. And the core premise of the game is it is a traditional squad-based TTRPG. However, it is played entirely in episodic one-shots with continuous characters. It's set in an infinite world with all player characters being agents of a mercenary organization at the heart of the multiverse called the Enclave. And every time you play, the Enclave sends you out to a different outlandish setting to accomplish a task for one of its many employers. And as such, every time you play, even if you're using the same character, you're leveling up. Not only does it mean that you can play with different people every time, you can play with different characters every time if you want, but every time you play, you're in a different setting, which makes it perennially fresh. It's kind of impossible to run out of content, which for me is a very big deal. Now, the other thing I'd say is that's quite important about Enclave, besides its dicelessness, is its low barrier to entry. Because coming into TTRPGs as an outsider, I was kind of struck by how much homework people need to do in order to play. And there's so many people who I've met who've been like, yeah, it seems cool, but I can't really be bothered to do all the reading. I took that to heart. I mean, I'd already had Enclave at a certain state, but I actually simplified it quite a bit when I was publishing it to try to minimize the barrier to entry. So at this point, it is a game that not only you can learn in 15 minutes, like you can pick it. If you're just reading the book as a player, you can learn it very fast. Character creation is all of 15 minutes. And if you have a host, we call our hosts conduits. If you have a conduit who knows what they're doing, you don't even have to open the book in order to learn the game. My default is hosting for people who don't read the book. And it's extremely easy to do. So we try to minimize barrier to entry and maximize actual playtime.
All right, that all sounds really great. One of the things that I found really interesting about it, as you mentioned, the game is diceless, and I think a lot of people are used to diceless mechanics, meaning their rules light. Yet you kind of describe the game as mechanically deep. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the mechanics actually look like and what we're actually doing if we're not rolling dice at the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So I try to frame Enclave as being rules optional. The kind of core play loop is very, very simple, very easy to grasp. But as you get comfortable with it, you can start to add in all sorts of optional advanced mechanics to make your experience more deep, hence minimal homework. And you can learn all these all on the fly, too. The kind of core resolution, you could say, for Enclave is very simple call and response. Like you'll have in a lot of other TTRPGs, you have the conduit describing what's going on, the players asking questions to direct their character's senses and world, the players then describing what they'd like to do, the conduit resolving it. The core resolution mechanics in Enclave are extremely straightforward and based in storytelling logic and common sense. If something should work, it works. There's no question. If something absolutely shouldn't work, it doesn't work. There's no question. But where it gets a little more interesting is where an outcome is truly ambiguous. If you as the conduit aren't immediately like, oh, I know what should happen here, that's something we call a swing situation. And in swing situations, the conduit resolves them by asking a set of kind of three questions to themselves. One is, how well has the player described what they are doing? And you can prompt them to elaborate if you feel like you could be convinced, right? So that way, if a player's doing something kind of dicey, then them adding more descriptive detail than really painting the picture, selling you on the scene, gets them the result they want, which is cool. And it makes it a very high skill ceiling game, though admittedly a different type of skill than you might be used to. The second question we ask ourselves is, what outcome would kill the story? And we don't do that. And when I say kill the story, I mean lead to a payoff that is not commensurate with the effort and the stakes that have been set. So it's too easy. Oh, wow. This one outcome just solves the whole thing with all at once. Just, a damp squib, so to speak. I should note, character injury and character death does not qualify for this. Those are extremely exciting things. We are talking about stuff that would reduce or remove the narrative buildup that we have had, or minimize it, so to speak. The last question, though, I'd say the most important one, is how much has the player contributed to the session as a person, not as a player? Are they keeping good table etiquette? Are they trying to stay in character? Are they hyping up their fellow players? Are they invested in the story? And if the answer to that is yes, you give it to them. And so because we have good players and good stories getting the benefit of the doubt in Enclave, it does two things. One, those three questions are very easy to ask. It means that calls can be solved in like less than a second once you get kind of used to it. Second of all, it means that I'd say most importantly, we can make sessions harder. Because we give good players and good stories the benefit of the doubt, we can actually set the challenge very high. There's no chance that random chance is going to screw your session. And I'd say even more excitingly, your success and failure is almost entirely determined by your own decisions. So that's kind of the way we approach it. We go off of storytelling logic and common sense, and in that like 5% where it's truly ambiguous, we give good players and good stories the benefit of the doubt and can be sold on it if you need convincing.
Well, I mean, that sounds great. It seems like one of those things like in an investigation style game, you're not going to reach a dead end because you don't have the thing where you roll, oh, you don't find anything. Oh, what do we do now? No. It sounds like you're never going to have that problem with the system. Never. One thing you talked about was building tension, though. And I think a lot of game masters that are used to using diceless systems are used to tension coming in via the dice. So there's that moment of, oh, will you pass it with the roll? Obviously, it's not in this game. So what other tools do you have in Enclave to kind of build tension when you're hosting a game?
Yeah, excellent question. So I think a lot of that comes naturally through storytelling because since you are doing a one shot every time, you get to give your players kind of a crash course to the story leading into it. You say, okay, here's your mission statement. There's a Q&A. Your players get this little hype building in them. They're sent into the world and they have to immediately start exploring. So just the natural structure of it and the fact that the player owns the story a lot more is going to build stakes and tension. But I'd say there's a couple bigger parts that make it even more relevant. One being the restrictions that we place on characters in Enclave. Characters in Enclave obviously have supernatural powers. It's exciting and cool and fun, but we don't have HP in Enclave. Wounds are treated holistically, which means a knife to the neck kills you. And this by itself adds so much tension. And it means that even relatively mundane threats, oh no, it's a mugger with a knife. That's actually a problem if you don't have a combat-oriented character. And even if you do, it's going to be rare that you can just ignore him. You have to do something about it. So I'd say, again, the structure of the game adds the stakes too, but I'd say a big part of it comes in with becoming more experienced as a host. As you can see in all others, you start to learn these wonderful narrative tricks. I can give a few basic ones just off the top.
Yeah, pick an example now. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do to build stakes in game is I use timers. Timers are not literal. You're not saying, oh, in 15 minutes, but what you're doing is you are putting your players on a clock through the story of the game. An example being, let's say you're doing a basic mission. Okay, you got to assassinate the king. Nice and easy. But suddenly, what if we say you have to assassinate the king before he leaves on an international trip and the carriage is waiting for him outside? All of a sudden, you're under the clock. You have to either find a way to distract him or hold him up, or you need to work really fast before he gets out to the courtyard. And maybe he's taking his sweet time. Maybe he gets held up by a servant. I, as the conduit, still have control over how that clock pans out. But simple tricks like that that I think are kind of universal across all storytelling media are perfect fits for Enclave, and I'd say mechanically contribute to the game as much, if not more, than many of the written mechanics.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about characters and who we're going to be in the game. You've already talked about how people, because it's kind of one-shot episodes, almost like a TV show series, it feels a bit like. You could have your character that continues through, or you could kind of bring new ones in. You've mentioned it takes only about 15 minutes to create. What goes into character creation, and who are the people that we're playing in this game?
Sure. So all player characters are agents of the Enclave, this interdimensional mercenary organization. They can come from wildly different backgrounds. Enclave, again, takes place in an infinite world called Manifold. There is no set tech level. There is no set history. There's no set world building. And so every time you make a character and you give that character a backstory, you are world building your own little corner of Manifold. That becomes canon where they are from, even if it's strange and outlandish. Doesn't matter. But what does matter is, for whatever reason, these characters have been enlisted by the Enclave as its agents. And so because of that, not only do you have pretty vast amounts of customizability just in terms of pure aesthetics, as long as the class's mechanical capacities are still able to function, you can reskin them as anything. And the skins can become very relevant. As an example, we have a class called the Thunderbird. It's kind of at base kind of a more shamanic, paganist sort of class, but many people have reskinned it to be futuristic with no problem whatsoever. You can reskin it to be a modern punk rocker whose thunder hammer is an electric guitar. I don't care. As long as it still works, it works. And that's a huge part of what makes Enclave so vivid. So the only limitation is that your characters are agents of the Enclave, and they have to fit within the mechanical confines of their class. So as a gunslinger, actually, you said what goes into a character. So let me talk you through it real quick.
Okay, yeah. So there's character classes to choose from, it sounds like, to begin with.
Yep. We in the base core rule set of the game, we only have 6. It's a pretty small number, but there's a ton of build variety within those 6. And the expansion introduces another 6. I have plans for many more going forward. I can get into that later if you'd like. But what goes into a class is, or what goes into a character is, first of all, pick a class. Then you get a personality based on 3 traits, just kind of guidelines for character acting. Next, you pick your starting stats. Stats are another thing that we have mechanically in Enclave, despite being diceless. Stats are heuristics. They're like benchmarks for relative power level, so you can try to stay consistent with power as you're playing. There are 12 stats, which is a lot, but you only have to worry about a couple of them at a time. And again, as you learn the game, it starts to become as natural as breathing to use them. Then after starting stats, you pick your starting gear. Classes have signature items that have cool supernatural benefits and are like representative of the archetype that they come from. And then lastly, your abilities. You don't have to pick these. You get all 3. Classes have 3 listed core abilities. Lastly, name, appearance, background. Like I said, appearance and background matter a lot in Enclave, but you can also keep them very simple. I recommend people start with like a sentence or less of each, because you're actually able to add to them as you play, defining something in the moment, so long as 1, it makes sense, 2, it's not too convenient in the moment, and 3, you commit to it from then on. So it allows characters to be kind of organically built as you play and keeps character creation short and sweet. And yeah, that's kind of what goes into a character. And so long as your signature items and your abilities can be kind of enmeshed with the skin you have chosen, you can make your character look like and come from anything and anywhere.
Perfect. I mean, it sounds like a really nice toolkit system for game masters. I mean, obviously, talking about character creation, it gives the players a huge amount of creativity to create whatever they want. And I'm imagining that for game masters as well, because you can pick whatever setting or genre you like for where this mission is going to take place, because it makes sense kind of in the world. We are coming into October, and I know a lot of people love to do kind of one-shots of different systems around Halloween, so kind of horror or spooky-themed games. So do you have any kind of advice or guidance for people that are thinking of hosting a game of Enclave and want to do something for the spooky season?
Well, I wish that I had the new PDFs out in time for that. But what I can say, just in terms of Enclave, is that on our Discord server, we have a wonderful, very active Discord community who's been playing the original version of the game since it launched. We actually do have a bit of a tradition that people call the Season of Slaughter on our Discord, where people tend to go out of their way to host extremely hard missions just for fun, and just be like, yep, just to let everyone know going into this is going to be really hard. In the expansion, I'm actually adding explicit mechanics for this, where if a group agrees to do a harder or more challenging mission and you succeed, you get bonus rewards for doing it.
Wait, that sounds really fun. So if people are wanting to get involved and play a game, is the Discord server a good place for them to go and try out a game?
It is the place to go, I'd say. Like what the Discord is where our community is at its heart, because Enclave is awesome live. I love playing live, but we have players all around the world. We have players across, I think, 4 continents at this point.
Wow.
And obviously they're not going to be able to all meet up. And so Enclave also as a diceless game is kind of uniquely playable over video chat in a very smooth, easy way. And so you don't have to do like a separate dice cam or anything like that. It's very quick, very smooth, and feels almost no different from playing live. And so it's a game that lends itself well to Discord. The Discord is open, and also even while the Kickstarter is running, if you join the Discord server, we will give you a loaner copy of the original game rules so you can play for free.
Fantastic. That sounds good. We'll put the links to that in the show notes. So if you're listening or watching, you can click through on there if that's of interest.
Thank you so much.
So we've been talking a little bit about the Kickstarter. It's launching tomorrow. I'm sure a whole lot of work's gone into this. So you've got a new kind of, is it fair to say a new edition, or is it, are we saying coming out with it? Because there's a lot of changes that you put into it. Or would you say it's a new print run?
I'd say it's a new edition.
Okay.
It is the way I've been talking about it is second printing. But when like on the Discord server, we call it V2. So the original one was Enclave Advent V1, then this is Enclave Advent V2. The structure of the game is that Advent, our core rule set, is really short. It's a concise rule set that's meant to be sleek and accessible and doesn't take too much reading. And then if you want to add more, you can then add Aspirant, which is our expansion. Aspirant is going to be like, I'd say at least double the length of Advent. And doesn't repeat anything. It just adds new stuff. And I'd say that even though Advent may seem like, oh, there's only 6 classes, like how much can you get out of that? On our Discord server, we've had, I'd say, at least 3 or 4 people since it launched in 2023 clock over 100 sessions. So there's some chunky replayability in there, but I'd say Aspirant will take it to be truly infinite.
I mean, how many more classes do you have in Aspirant, or does it allow you to edit classes in different ways? What sort of mechanics does that bring?
Oh, excellent question. So the Advent 6 have a lot of customizability and character creation, but also as you level, you're able to not only branch out your build path, but also even grab signature items off of other classes, which is very fun and exciting. In Aspirant, however, not only are we adding 6 new classes, but we're also adding a ton of depth to progression and character designs. Letting you customize signature items, letting you customize personality traits, and very excitingly, letting you get abilities off of other classes. So you can really, really branch out your builds. And we are adding twice as much content for each class. Instead of 3 abilities and 6 signature items, we're going up to 6 abilities and 12 signature items per class. Half of those abilities are advanced abilities, super powerful, but need to be unlocked rather than starting with them.
Okay. Fantastic. That's great. I mean, are there any, running the Kickstarter, I'm sure you said there's a whole massive book. So it sounds like there's a whole bunch of other mechanics or optional rules and things people can bring out. Do you have 1 or 2 you want to give a shout out to make sure people know about?
Yes, there's so many good ones. So I mentioned the optional difficulty and danger increases. That one's huge, frankly. I'd say another one I'm really looking forward to is a mechanic called fizzling. And a fizzle allows you to narrate one of your own actions failing. You get to, you choose to fail one of your own actions. But you get to choose how it fails. So you get narrative control for determining how it fails. And second of all, if it truly fails badly and it's like actually a problem, you get extra what we'll call benefit of the doubt credit in future swing situations. So you can effectively bank success for future. And for people who, because Enclave is a game where people already do this sort of thing.
Yeah, I imagine.
Fun, exciting and narrative. And now you get an actual reward for it.
Okay, cool. I love that you're encouraging that sort of behavior as well, because it's sometimes failing is the more interesting thing in the story moment, and it tells a better story. So that makes perfect sense. And speaking of crowdfunding, this is your second crowdfunding campaign because you had the original one back in 2023. A lot of people are interested in publishing games and looking to do crowdfunding. Do you have any kind of learnings or guidance, recommendations, or things you want to share for other people if they're thinking about doing a crowdfunding campaign?
Good Lord, so many. I've learned a ton. Like my first crowdfunder was very small. I was really happy with it. I was proud of it, but I went in completely blind. And I would kind of recommend people do the same. Do a small scale campaign where you just try to learn as you go. Because, yeah, you could try to get everything perfect in advance, but I don't think there's any better teacher than actually doing it.
Sure.
I can give some more specifics as well, but the kind of the starting Kickstarter, like your first branch out into it, should be about 1, learning the website, 2, putting your foot into advertisement and trying it out as best you can. It sucks, it's awful, we hate it, but you know, it's a necessary evil. And I'd say 3 is figuring out the logistics of actually putting something together. You have to do all of your own fulfillment. You have to reach out to the printing companies. You have to figure out layouts. There's so much to do yourself. And these are all extremely important things to be able to do if you want to take game design at all into the future. Because let me put it this way. If you were to use you say to yourself, oh, I don't want to handle distribution. That sounds like a pain. I want to get picked up by a publisher or a distributor. You know what I mean? Most experiences that I have seen of people who do that is that they aren't able to make a living doing that. They don't get enough of a cut. And so if you want to really make a living at it, you need to learn to do it yourself. Similarly, you say, oh, I want to work with a shipping company, so I don't have to worry about it myself. Okay, goodbye 10% of your funds. That's period. That's a lot. And so if you do your own shipping and you charge, here's a very important tip. Don't charge shipping until after your campaign when you're ready to fulfill. Very important. That was a mistake I made the first time around. Suddenly, if you do your own shipping, yes, it's pain. Yes, it's annoying. You make like 10% of your campaign back, quote unquote, because you didn't have to pay a third party. So try to do as much of it as you can yourself. Do your own layouts. There's free programs out there like Figma for graphic design. It's a great program. There's cheap like knockoffs to the Adobe suite, like Affinity. No shade to Affinity. I love Affinity. It's like 95% as good as the Adobe suite, and it's a one-time payment. So why not? Like try to do it yourself wherever you can, and only outsource something that you know for a fact you can't do. For me, that's art. I'm not a good artist. I can muddle through graphic design, but I can't do art. So I had to outsource it. I have an awesome artist. I've worked with him forever. That's where you want to put your budget.
Fantastic. That's some great advice. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Totally. I have more, but I don't want to motor on.
We could do an entire show entirely about what did you learn from doing a Kickstarter. Maybe that's a whole podcast in itself. New idea. But anyway, we'll talk about Enclave Aspirant a bit more. So you have the Kickstarter campaign, which is going live tomorrow. The link is on the screen in the show notes, and if you're listening to the podcast, or in the comments if you're listening to the live stream, so you can check that out there. If people have any questions about it and they want to get in touch, where's the best place to get in touch? Is that the Discord?
Sure. We have a lot of great activity on Discord. There's a lot of people who've been playing the game for, at this point, up to 2 years and more, who are delightful and are great about answering questions. If you want to get in touch with me directly, it's a little tough because I'm going to be smashed, but Discord's a good place to start. Post in the Discord. I'll try to pop in when I can. On Kickstarter comments, you're welcome to do that too. But also, I do have an email that I try to stay as on top of as possible, which is robbylavagames@gmail.com.
Fantastic. And we'll put that in the show note comments as well. Well, wish you all the best with the crowdfunding campaign. Really excited to see all the extra things that are coming to the Enclave. And thank you so much for coming on to share it with us. Before you go, I do have one more question for you, which I ask everyone, and that's, do you have any recommendations for any other role-playing games?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to try to keep it to ones I'm pretty sure you guys won't have heard before.
Okay.
Because I could say, Pirate Boy, because it was the only game I've ever actually played. But
that's valid, yeah.
I think most of you know it. I would recommend a game called Fae, Fae. It is by an independent creator named Jay Moores. He happens to be a friend of mine, but I met him through his game, not vice versa. He is not only a wonderful guy who does all of his own art, and it's beautiful. And he has, I want to say, like over a decade, maybe even approaching 2 decades as a professional comic illustrator to back that up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But also, even though it is a dice-based game, it is a dice-based game that actually understands and appreciates roleplay. which I think is wildly important.
Fantastic. That's a great recommendation for Faye there. So thanks a lot for that. That's all the time we have this week. If you watched or listened, thank you very much. We'll be back next week with another tabletop RPG for you. But for now, we'll say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much.